Hello, everyone. Welcome to day three, question two. I know the last one was a good one. So, today also we're going to be diving into some aggregated functions. So, let's quickly go through our use case here. So, if you look at this use case, operations needs an at a glance inventory health summary, total product by subcategory to prepare for seasonal demand, and then we do have the business impact. And your task is to publish a KPI summary sheet with key inventory metrics. And guys, if you've been following us so far, we do have a template we follow. And the first one is we want to ask ourselves, do we have a table, a filter, an attribute? Now we're going to add one more item to that list, which is going to be, do we have a aggregated value? Okay, any aggregation in this particular use case. Now, let's talk about the first one, tables. Now, we do know from what we've seen so far in the use case, we have to deal with product, and we've dealt with that in the past. And product is in production schema, so that's fine. Do we have some attributes? So we do know our attribute as product subcategory ID or product count, and so those will be our two attributes, and product count is a derived column. Okay, now any filters here, we naturally don't have filters, but then that takes us to the next new item we've had into our template, which is the aggregation. So we do have some aggregation to be done here, right? And we have the total product by subcategory. So let's take note of that. All right, so let's go back to our lab and take a look at the data. So we can see I've already put in here the table itself. And so let's run it again, and just to have a look. Okay, let's run that again. It should work. Okay, beautiful. Now you can see this is this is not new to us. If you've been following us so far. Now what we need to do is then to say, let's talk a little bit about aggregation, especially for those that may be new in this platform, okay, or new to SQL generally. So aggregated functions in SQL really helps us to perform some calculations on a set of values and return a single value. Okay, and some of the examples of aggregated functions are count. We use that to count the number of columns, sum to add up numeric values, average, calculate the average of numeric values, minimum, finds the smallest value, maximum finds the largest value. All right, so let's quickly run through some examples, and then we'll go back to our use case. Okay, so for example, if you look at this table, you can see total rows here is 504. However, we've not been able to return a single aggregated value. So with that, we're going to use a function we've talked about just now, count, and we're going to say count star. Okay, and the asterisk, you already know what that is, so we can say count. Let's run this, and it should return 504 for us. Okay, so when you run that, you can see it does return 504. And some people can also like to put one here, either is fine, and it should work quite well. Okay, so this kind of give you an idea of how the calculated value or aggregation works. Now you can also alias this as total product at this point. Okay, total product. All right, and then when you run that, you can see the name of the column has changed, and then we have 504. Now let's quickly talk about some other ones as well, okay, before we then go to our use case. So now we look at the count. Let's run the similar thing for minimum. In this case, we'll be looking at minimum, and we're going to have to be specifying the column we're trying to find the minimum value. Okay, in this case, we are looking at safety stock levels. So let's look at safety stock level and find the minimum stock we have. Okay, and let's comment this out, and then let's run that. And it tells us that we do have a minimum of 4. Okay, and we can call this minimum number of minimum stock level. So let's call this minimum. The name as minimum stock level. stock level. We can also do the same thing for maximum as well. Let's switch this over to maximum. Okay, and then we call this max stock level, and then you run it. So okay, so now we can see the minimum stock level, the maximum stock level, which is great. Okay, so that's really how um, aggregation really works. Okay, now that we have an idea of aggregation, I need to introduce you to some key things you need to take note here. Prior to this video, what we've been looking at is select, from, where, and then order by. Those are really the main functions we've been looking at, okay, in SQL. Now we're gonna add one more functions, okay, or command. It's called group by, okay, and I'm gonna explain what that does. Okay, now you understand how to do aggregation, but at some point you might want to summarize based on a particular column or couple of columns. How do you do that? Then group by come handy when we need to summarize based on a particular column or set of columns. Okay, now let's go back to our question, and we're gonna go back to this one that says that we have done before, which is the total product. Let's drop that in here. All right, and one other thing, guys, I want you to really take note here is the order at which these guys are being represented here. You can see select, from, where, group by, and order by. This is key for you to know. Okay, so for now I'm just going to comment this, and then let's run this again. We should still have 504. Perfect. Now however, we need to group by subcategory, so we're going to have to look for subcategory. You can see it right here. I'm going to drop that here. Now if we run this, it won't work because it's looking for a group by, right? You will need to specify the group by. Okay, and then we'll say, okay, we actually want to group by this column. Okay, so we drop in that column, and then at that point it will work. Okay, you can see now what it's saying is that now that I'm grouping based on product subcategory ID. And guess what? The other time we went over the difference between distinct and unique. At this point, the product subcategory ID in this result set is going to be unique, meaning all the values will appear once, and then the aggregated values would then are then being displayed. Now one more thing we need to do here is that we actually want to order by the count. So instead of, we can reference count here. That's one way we can do it. We can say count one and then in descending order, and it should work, right? That's one way we can do it. We can also, I know in some of the previous session we've had, we talked about how we can use number, and not all the SQL system that allows number, but in this case we're going to use number, and we can use two as well here, and it should work fine. But what we really want to use is we can also use the derived column name, right? And then when we put that in here also, that should work. All right, this is great, guys. And then another thing I want to point out here is that instead of you explicitly calling out the group by column, you can just reference one if it's the first column, and that should work as well. Okay, so those are various nuances that you need to kind of keep in mind when you are working with these different functions. All right, now let's quickly compare this with the value that we have. We can see we have 12.1, and then we have 32.28, and that should be exactly 32.28, 112. Okay, so that shows us that that's exactly what we are expected to display. Okay, okay, so just give me 1 second. Okay, so that's exactly what we're expected to really display. So I hope this has been helpful to you. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next session.